The Europa Heist Battleground Nightfall is the first Grandmaster of Season of the Witch, and you know what? Hold on a second. Hello? Yes, Bungie? Could we do something about these increasingly gigantic long titles for activities? I'd like to be able to actually fit the name in the video title and not sound like I'm talking about Smitty Weberman Jensen. Uh-huh. Yeah, okay. Whoa, let's not get hostile now. GM Heist Europa is the latest Battleground brought into the Nightfall playlist, following the footsteps of Mars and Moon respectively. Although it's not quite as brutal and unforgiving as its counterparts, it can also get chaotic and overwhelming pretty quickly. It's also, in a shocking turn of events, double loot rewards on the very first week of Grandmasters this season, so it's a good time to maximize stocking up on Ascendant Shards, and if you're looking for a God roll, maybe get a reprise the Warden's Law while you're at it. So let's go over a detailed breakdown guide. First up, loadouts. I don't think you'll be hearing anything groundbreaking here, but best subclasses to use for this particular GM are going to be well-rated Warlocks with Cenotaph specifically, and Hunters as Night Stalkers for constant debuffs and on-demand invisibility. As for Titans, I don't think they have nearly as much viability in this kind of GM as the other two classes do, but if you're a Titan main, I would probably stick with Banner of War and just tone down the aggressive play, as getting too impatient can punish your team in this Nightfall. I also would like to give a shout out to Arc Warlocks here, in particular with Vesper of Radius. The constant juggling of damage resist, enemy blinding, and super quick supers, with it being Arc Surge for this GM, makes it a pretty viable option, especially if you have more than one Warlock on your team. For modifiers, it is Arc Surge, so things with that affinity will naturally stand out, but I will say those are not mandatory. Also, for incoming damage, it is Solar Threat, along with plenty of enemies that also shoot Arc and Void, so be sure to stack up on one of each resist if possible on your chest. As for weapon loadouts, while rockets will certainly be the overwhelming favorite for speedrunners and just trying to go lightning fast in every room, I don't think that'll be quite as effective for, let's say, a solo player just trying to LFG, or maybe playing with friends that are less experienced than you and you're just trying to, carry them through the activity for some good loot while they're not really experienced with being underleveled. That said, if you are experienced enough to speedrun with rockets and blast through the GM without any issues, by all means go ahead. As for other options, I believe your top choice other than rockets will be linear fusions, as they still do good damage, they have plenty of ammo even if you don't have a Cenotaph Warlock, and are generally just easy to use. There's also a Giant Shrieker as the final boss with a huge crit box that is super easy to hit in the final room, so you may as well just take advantage. Final suggestion for a heavy weapon, and this one is specifically to hunters out there. If you have Retrofit Escapade crafted, and your team will be bringing a Divinity user, absolutely consider bringing it in, as it claps the asses of every enemy in this Nightfall. It may not be the best DPS weapon out there, but for ease of use and easily clearing rooms, it's certainly worth it while pairing it with Gyrfalcons, the exotic chess piece. And if you don't believe me for some reason, just watch the background footage for yourself and see that it deals with endgame stuff just fine in this GM. Now onto the Grandmaster itself and some general activity tips. At the very start, lean towards the left side of the map when heading to the activity entrance to Clovis Bray's lab. You'll be able to just safely climb up some rocks and then carefully make your way towards the entrance while dealing with minimal enemies and not being targeted by those Seraph beams literally every other second. Once inside the lab, your first room will be greeting you with 2 barrier champions, the high variety, and a ton of orange bar fallen. What I would recommend to do is to set up shop on the right-hand side of the arena as you enter, and from here you'll be able to spot the barrier champion that's standing in the center, and then take him out, while also being able to look to your right for the other barrier champion whenever you're ready. Additionally, enemy fire will be much more limited coming at you from this angle than you would have if you were just standing in the middle. However, you should expect a bunch of random grenades to be thrown at you, so don't get too tunnel vision on a particular enemy. Last tip for this opener, if you can, try to not pull the heavy brick unless you need it, so you could spread out your heavy across the entire battle of this room, if you will. And unless you have a Cenotaph Warlock going burr, you should always try to conserve. Also, during the initial wave here, pay attention to the Exploder Shanks spawning in. They typically spawn in groups of 2, and they're just super annoying as hell. Once you've cleared out most of the Fallen, and assuming you have a control super such as Will of Radiance or Tether, you can make your way up to the middle of the room and start anchoring down enemies that are going to be spawning in. Fallen will continue to spawn in around you as you gradually make your way up towards the end of the room. This will begin to also spawn in 2 groups of Exploder Shanks, just like before. Typically, there'll be one on the left-hand side and then the other on the right-hand side. There will also be a Sniper Shank on the left and right hand side as well, so watch out for those. Now, once you've dealt with enough of regular Fallen, you'll be greeted with a Stasis Captain Fallen Yellow Bar. He's nothing special other than being able to throw a Dusk Field at you, so don't try to prioritize him too much if you don't have to, and work on the trash mobs first instead. Finally, as the waves are coming down, you'll have one last Hive Barrier Champion spawn in at the end of the room, just in front of where the Stasis Captain did. Take that jabroni out as well, and then once you're done, go get your heavy ammo brick. Moving a bit ahead, we're not going to be covering the 3 Knights and 1 Shrek room. It's a working title, let me be. Anyway, this room, as you may have guessed, has 3 Hive Barrier Champions along with 1 Unstoppable Ogre, all the way in the back. Now, there isn't really a bad method here as long as you keep your distance, but what I found to work well for me is going up to the second Hive Trap Circle that you see. It's the one where the 3 Acolytes are standing, kind of to your left as you enter the room, and then having your Warlock pop their well there, and having a Hunter possibly pop their tether on the bottom if you happen to have a Hunter. This does a few things. Your well will obviously protect you because it's well. Your tether will suppress a bunch of enemies so you can kill them very quickly. And also, you popping your well here will break line of sight with the Ogre completely, so he won't be beaming you down the entire time as if you were at the beginning of the room just looking directly at him. So this allows you to safely knock out the Barrier Champs and the Hive Boomers one by one until you whittle them down to just the lone Ogre Champ in the back with maybe a Boomer or 2 behind him. Make ammo if you can. Don't forget to default dance on that Ogre and then make your way to the next room. Alright, so room number 3 is the Tomb Ship room. Yeah, let's go with that. In here, you will have the advantage of sitting as far back as you want and playing it safe as long as you want. The only one situation where you will have to engage and rush will be taking out Xivu's Death Tongue, who will take away your abilities and summon annoying shriekers into the arena if you don't deal with it fast enough. Much like the last room, this can be easily dealt with by pressing your super button and summoning another incredibly balanced Well of Radiance. If you have a tether, plant it along the trail that the Death Tongue is taking, and then debuff it / slow it down, and then focus fire it immediately. Rockets, linears, divinity, whatever, just get it down as fast as you can. Then, after the Death Tongue is down, take it as easy and slow as you'd like. There's a few barrier champions to deal with in here, and 1 Unstoppable Ogre, but make your way through one by one. Also, don't forget that there's a heavy brick on the drop down to grab, so try not to pick it up too early, and don't forget to pick it up at the end if you need heavy ammo. After you have cleared this room and are heading into the corridor, there is something very important you should know. The game just straight up hates you, and if you dare go through the laser portion too fast and efficiently, barrier champions spawn out of actually out of thin air, and will beam you down if you're not prepared. For this part, once you go through the laser door number 2, just be ready to attack the barriers and break them ASAP. Otherwise, even if you don't kill them, they will just run away and make your next room much harder than it already is. Now that you've dealt with the corridor, the next room is Clovis's headroom, where Clovis will not shut the hell up while you're fighting a small army. Make sure you have dialogue muted to save your sanity. It's very important to beating the Snipeball, just letting you know. On a serious note though, I've seen some teams struggle with this in particular just because of the sheer amount of enemies shooting at you on the initial entry to this room, and the best advice I can give you is 2 specific things. Number 1, if there is a Hive barrier in the center of the room, nuke him first. Forget everything else, just nuke that knight. Number 2, once you have either dealt with that knight, or if you have a hunter who can make people invisible, get ready to run. Hold left as you come down the room and make a sharp left as soon as you are under that left wizard yellow bar, and then go around to the back and then jump up. From here, you have a fantastic advantage point, and you can start blowing through everyone and everything in this room. Well plus tether once again goes hard here, as you will likely be seeing on screen, and the most you'll have to worry about is some Thrall running up to you, and even then, they spawn directly in front of you, so you can just keep an eye on them. At this point, it's just about priority targeting and knocking out the yellow bars one by one, and eventually, you'll be through the room pretty easily. Now onward to the metal slip and slide that will surely break your ankles on the way down. There's one very simple and straight to the point thing you can do here to open the door to the boss room quickly. One player will be the away player, and you will head to the right side to get the relic from there. Why the right? Because there is literally just a knight and 2 acolytes guarding it, and that's it. Pretty easy, pretty simple to take out. And don't bother sending anyone to the left, as not only does the left side have annoying enemies, but it also has desyncing lasers that will probably screw you over. But that's not all. You also just need 2 relics to open the door, as long as you don't waste ammo. And guess what? The game already gives you a free one right above you as you enter this little room. So the other 2 players that I didn't mention, just go up there, get the relic, bring down some of the chains on the door, and just control the ads that'll be spawning right under you protecting the player that's coming back from the right side so they don't get beamed by acolytes or whatever else, and they can just simply finish the door off nice and easy in like under 30 seconds. Finally, we're in the boss room. So there's a few ways you could tackle this boss room. I found that all the corners of the arena have a decent chunk of real estate for you to hide behind and just plink away at enemies slowly, and you could pick any of them that you really want, but I believe the top left and the top right of the arena as your best bet. Now, between those two, I think the top right is the best choice to make here, as it gives you the high ground on everything in the room minus the boss. But I will say the positive is, to the left side, you can kind of go over there and hide more, as it has just more real estate and walls to hide behind and feel safer. So feel free to pick either one, whichever one you're comfortable with. I just happen to prefer the high ground just to be above some of the enemies. Now, as far as the fight itself and how it works, there's a few key triggers to keep in mind here. First, the fight is 2 phases. It's blast to 50%, then the Shrieker immunes up until you dunk 5 relics, and then it's the other 50%. So take that info how you will on that part. Next, every 25% health or so, enemies will spawn into the arena. Most of these range from acolytes and wizards, but you will have a few Hive Sword Knights roaming around, albeit largely useless. If you're in a corner of the arena, they just kind of like stand still near the middle, as well as Fallen Captains that will spawn in the arena for the immunity phase and beyond, which will provide you the relics. Lastly, there will be 2 champions in this fight to kill as well. One barrier champion will be in the first half of the fight, the first 50%, and one more after you've broken the immunity shield on the boss. So if you're going for plat, make sure to prioritize them first. Otherwise, you could technically ignore the last one and try to just melt the boss if you're going for a single clear. By the way, before you start the fight by pressing the middle console, remember that you can pop a super and then immediately get it right back after starting the fight, so you can initially put down a well or a tether, and then get an immediate second one due to how the fight works and how it starts, and that could be very valuable for your team. As for the fight rotation, at the start of the fight, you should have your team try to melt down the boss's health as much as possible, if not the whole 50%. But if you can't do that, that's totally fine. At this point, your 2 main goals should be to immediately shoot down any darts the boss throws at you, and then start mowing down the enemies under you. If you're on the left side, I guess they would be kind of creeping into your side slowly. Remember to chain your supers as much as you can when the room is packed, just to keep your consistency up. You know, well, tether, chaos reach if you're like on Vespers, things like that. Now, once you've made the boss go immune to start phase 2 of the fight, you need to dunk 5 relics into that center console that I mentioned earlier to make the boss damageable again and finish the battle. But you will need to be careful, as every time you do dunk, enemies will spawn into the arena. Again, it's just mostly wizards and acolytes, but you do need to deal with them. One huge tip I want to point out here, for hunters specifically, is if you're running Stylish Executioner, anytime you defeat a debuffed enemy from any of your avoid abilities, you'll go invisible. This goes absurdly well with the Retrofit plus Gerfalcon combo, as you can keep up your abilities literally forever, and this can help you in fetching the relics greatly. In theory, you can proc volatile rounds via Gerfalcons plus Retrofit, and then using your dodge, after dodging, simply get a kill with an ability or with Retrofit itself. This will make you invisible. Now you can pick up the relics from the Fallen Captains and walk them into the console absolutely freely. Additionally, after you dunk, you can use the exact same combo to reapply invisibility to yourself and do it all over again. So technically speaking, you can just kill the captain, take his ball, dunk it, kill him again, and rinse and repeat while going invisible non-stop every time. Now, of course, there is some risk of enemies being around the middle of the arena while you're dunking these, but this should be minimal, as your team will be covering you as much as they can, and potentially should be taking down the wizard specifically, since the boss is still immune and not moving and he won't be shooting you either. Finally, after dunking all 5 orbs, you reset the fight, and the last 50% health unlocks, and the fight begins again. Nothing changes here that you haven't already seen. Enemies will spawn in, the boss will attempt to shoot you while teleporting around like he's Goku with an instant transmission. Other than that, shoot down the Shrieker darts. Make sure that you prioritize nuking that barrier champion for platinum if you're going for that, as well as trash mobs around it just to clear out the room of pesky enemies. Once you've lowered down the enemies to a minimum, then it's time to crank the damage on the boss and finish the job. Overall, it'll come down to your team's coordination and positioning to stay in one solid spot in that boss room as the fight progresses, and to also make certain that you don't get too reckless or impatient. Once you've got these things down, the boss fight isn't so bad, and you'll get it done in no time. Once the boss is dead, congrats, you've beaten GM Smitty Weberman Jensen. GM Heist Europa. Enjoy your double loot, and hopefully your drops aren't 58 stat rolls like my radar armor every week, and I hope that you've enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy the content, or it's helped you, a like comment, or hitting the sub button would be appreciated and does help the channel in fighting the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.